The Collapse video series is for entertainment purposes only. Do not commit acts of violence. It's been over 4 months since the collapse. In Canada and the northern parts of the United States, the weather has turned cool. The leaves are changing color. Right now, a warm blanket is all that is needed at night, but winter will soon be upon them. No one is heating their homes yet, as they need all the wood for winter. The boost in morale from the harvest has given way to a sense of frenzy over preparations for the coming months. They made it through the first die-off, but the struggle is only just beginning. This will be a dark and cruel winter. They cannot rely on hunting and fishing. Populations of game in the forest and streams have been decimated by all the starving people. Those animal populations will return, but not for some time. The rural survivors must eat what they can preserve. Within the towns are a handful of people who know how to preserve food by canning, smoking, pickling, fermenting, dehydrating, salting, and sugaring. Those skills have become extremely valuable. Yet, those few people cannot preserve all of the food for the town on their own. They teach others to assist with mixed results. People attempting to preserve food for the first time in their lives make mistakes. Much of the food is not preserved correctly. The most popular method of food preservation is canning. While the term canning conjures images of metal cans, it's actually more commonly done on homesteads with glass jars. There is a major shortage of mason jars and lids for canning. The limited number of pressure canners are being used non-stop. The supply of propane is running out, but is still preferred for pressure canning because the temperature is easier to control. When the propane runs out, they put the pressure canner over an open fire, a tricky business. If the fire isn't hot enough, the bacteria will not be killed and the food will spoil. If the fire is too hot, the pressure canner explodes. In the end, a town that successfully preserves 2/3 of the harvest is doing well. It is not uncommon for less than half of the harvest to be properly preserved. It is not enough. Throughout the summer and into the fall, a few among the survivors have been trying to save seeds from the plants for next year. Saving seeds is not as simple as it sounds. Not many people have experienced saving seeds, as it is easier to purchase new seeds every year. In fact, most farmers and gardeners in the US and Canada under the age of 40 have precious little experience saving seeds. The large seed-producing companies require farmers to sign a contract saying they would purchase seeds annually from them, negating the need, or really the opportunity, to replant using saved seeds. To make matters worse, much of the seed used to produce crops is genetically modified, created in a lab and manufactured in mass. These seeds often grow plants that produce infertile seeds or poorly producing seeds. Even for natural plants, the ones known as biennials, such as carrots, produce seeds in their second year of life, not the first. And then there are plants such as potatoes that are normally grown from another such plant that must be carefully stored or regrown over the winter in a greenhouse. The temptation will be great in famine conditions to eat those potatoes instead of keeping them to replant. Even plants that produce good seeds that are easy to collect sometimes require a fermentation process or a cleaning process in order to achieve high germination rates. The result of all of these factors is that not enough viable seeds have been saved for the spring. The famine in the second year may be worse than the first. Now that over 4 months have passed in the rural areas, it is becoming increasingly noticeable who is losing weight much more slowly than other people in the town. Those people are the ones who collected and stored non-perishable food long before the collapse. They are the preppers. It was decided early on that people would not have to relinquish the food in their possession, but most preppers concealed their stores of food anyway, knowing that hunger causes good people to behave poorly. The preppers have also lost weight as they ration carefully, but not nearly as much as the others. The initial concern of the preppers was well-founded. Some of the townspeople are angry that the preppers allowed others to starve to death while they had months of food set aside. Never mind that preppers are so few in number that their entire stockpile would have been eaten by the town in a few days. Never mind that the preppers spent their disposable money and energy getting ready while others spent it on entertainment. What's keeping the preppers from being overrun by angry townspeople is their skills. They are the people most likely to know how to can and ferment, among other skills. By pointing this out, they are able to keep the angrier townspeople at bay, but the truce is uneasy. Animosity persists. The preppers would pick up and leave, but they need the town for safety. In anticipation of a harsh winter ahead, tens of thousands are migrating south on foot and by bike from Canada and the northern United States. The migration is not going well. Not only are small groups of marauders robbing and raping stragglers who get separated from the group, the journey itself turns into a death sentence. It is impossible to carry on one's back more than a week of food and a day or two of water. As they come upon towns in their journey, they are forced by the townspeople to walk around instead of through. Even when they are able to find water, they can't find food if they can't go into the towns. What little can be scavenged is taken by the first migrants to go through, the ones on bikes. Those on foot have nothing. After a week, hunger and exhaustion prevent them from continuing the migration. They find a place to rest and wait for death. Only migrants on bicycles get more than 100 miles from their starting place. But wherever there are resources, there are people ready to fight to the death to defend those resources. It would have been better to brave the winter in the north. On average, 3 hurricanes of Category 3 or higher hit the United States, Mexico, and the Caribbean every year. This has actually been a mild hurricane year, until now. An unnamed Category 4 slams into Florida after leveling the Bahamas. The people of Florida are accustomed to hurricanes, but they are also accustomed to having several days of warning to prepare and stock up or evacuate. They had no warning this time, but it wouldn't have helped. The winds and flood water arrive quickly and toss abandoned cars around like toys. Trees topple onto homes. Flooding is widespread. No first responders are sent to rescue people. There will be no aid arriving from the rest of the country. They are left to pick up the pieces on their own. Florida had already suffered widespread starvation from the collapse, and now this. Very few people remain alive in Florida. The division within the military is growing. While half of them are content to comply with their orders and continue commandeering supplies from the people to give to government officials as long as their own families are being protected and fed, the other half is disgusted that they are taking from the people to give to the government instead of the other way around. Those in favor of compliance justify their actions by stating that they are taking from the right-wing extremists who they say caused the collapse. Those against compliance say the politics no longer matter, as these are their countrymen struggling to survive. The chain of command has been holding the military together. Even those who don't like the orders have been complying, because being in the military means, among other things, that you follow the orders you are given. But in one of the army bases, a mutiny is developing. The base commander, a colonel, finds that all of his officers, like him, are against the orders to continue commandeering supplies. They agree that after keeping what they need for themselves and their families, they will distribute the rest to nearby towns instead of delivering those supplies to government officials as ordered. It's a small act of disobedience, but it's a start. In Washington, D.C., the general population eventually fled the city, as the urban populations did around the country, when they finally accepted that the government elites were not going to help them. Those government elites have taken care of themselves well. The military is providing them with food, fuel, and other supplies. The Capitol Power Plant is providing them with electricity. Even so, all is not well. Many, perhaps most, of the government elites do in fact love their country and hate what's happened. Most have friends and extended family elsewhere in the country that they aren't able to help. It's hard not to blame the president. But she is actually no longer in charge. When all the government agencies fell to pieces except for the military became the de facto government. Per the president's orders, the Secretary of Defense was arranging for Washington, D.C. to have what it needed. He was doing what she told him to do until one day he disagreed with one of her orders. It was something small. She wanted him to seize more coal, but he thought there was enough for now. He declined to send his men back out. She repeated her order. He declined again. She took a deep breath in defeat. They both knew she had become a figurehead for the military. She's a paperweight to hold the Constitution in place. On the off chance that the Republic resumes, it will be easier to return to the previous system of government if some semblance of it has been preserved until then. The Secretary of Defense wants to keep the president and she wants to stay, but he's in charge now. If you would like to see an ad-free version of these videos, go to my BitChute or Brighteon page. Even with the ads, there is not nearly enough revenue to support continued production of the series. Please consider supporting me on Subscribestar or click on the PayPal link in the description.